This week's episode of The Grid is sponsored by MPix. Shoot today, upload tonight, we ship tomorrow. Manfrotto, imagine more. On One Software, software that gets you back to shooting. Adorama, more than a camera store. Tiffin, helping create the world's greatest images. Peach Pit Press, publishers of technology books, ebooks, and videos for creative people. Epson, exceed your vision. Expo Imaging, Rogue Flash Benders for speedlight enthusiasts. Nix Software, photography first. And B&H Photo, the professional source.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Grid. And my name is RC, and I'm joined by two very, very important people to me. All right. On my right, we have Mr. Jeff Snyder from Adorama. Jeff, it's good to have you back.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you here. It's good to have you here. And on my left, we have the one and only Mr. Joe McNally. You guys wanted him back. We brought him back for you for an hour. Joe, what's going on, man?
Hey, man. How's it going, RC?
Good. We shake hands like all of a sudden, like, oh my God, we've just seen each other.
Hey. Well,
he's very inappropriately touching my leg. Where it's
I can't help it. It's the animal magnetism that you project.
I know. Don't it? Can you imagine? I've always wanted to do that to somebody. I always want to go, hey, it's nice to meet you. Just be like, isn't it? Just to throw people off to see kind of what happens. Anyway, thank you so much, guys, for coming in here and joining us today. I wanted to kind of throw a couple of different things out there, right? Rather than have one topic that we're going to talk about, it's not all that often that I get to have kind of the two of you to kind of bandy about a bunch of different things. So I said, what I thought would be cool would be to just kind of open it up to 3 different topics. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Now, let's just get some housekeeping stuff done. If you want to be watching this, you're probably watching this on kelbytv.com/on-air or kelbytv.com/the grid. If you want to leave us a comment, make sure that you go into the comment section and sign in. And the French ambassadress, Miss Nancy Massey, is over there, ready and willing.
That was very French.
She's moderating. She's hanging out. She's watching all of the stuff. She's watching all of your shenanigans. And between that, Mr. Pete Collins sitting here at the front and Brad Moore will be able to get all your comments into them. I kind of want to just more throw it to you guys for the most part. I just want to facilitate the conversation.
Okay.
So 3 things that I do want to talk about with that. I want to talk about the importance of photographic history. Right? Okay. So it's going to be a very NPR kind of show, guys. I'm sorry. Scott and Matt leave, and I'm just like, you're listening to All Things Considered on National Public Radio. But we want to have that kind of conversation. I'm a big fan of photography. I'm a big fan of history, reading up on it and studying different types of people. And I kind of want to know what you guys are doing with that. So I know that we've gotten into a bunch of conversations about that. I know that you spend a lot of time doing photography as well. So get a chance on that. Then after that, we're going to do some Q&A.
Okay.
I'll have people just fire off as many questions as they can on us.
Okay.
And then after that, we have some pictures that we wanted to do some critiques about. We know that you guys want to spend some time getting some images to Joe, so we've picked some images at random to do that. So that's pretty much it.
Sounds cool to me.
Now,
I'm ready.
What brings you guys down here? What brings you guys down here to Tampa, Florida, before we actually start all of that?
Quite possibly the reason I look the way I do right now is for the last 2 days I've been trying to do a shoot and just been getting my butt kicked by thunderstorms, nonstop repetitive thunderstorms, trying to do lighting in the wind and the rain and lightning, etc. Just highly inadvisable climates to try to bring out, metal poles and lights and electrical equipment and all of that. So that's what I've been doing for the last couple of days. I've been trying to do a class called Managing Bad Light Well. And in a funny way, that's really, really worked out to be the case, and just came out of the field. So I'm actually partially drenched as I'm sitting here.
Yeah. And now, is it going okay? Is it going all right?
It's actually going really well. We've made some good pictures. We had some great subjects and good locations. The weather was something we just kind of danced around, but hey, it's location photography.
And that's one of the things that I thought was great about that was because you guys are out there and you're talking about this and managing bad light well. Sometimes it could just be a little pre-canned. I mean, classes can be pre-canned, and it's like, all right, well, here we are on a bright day. What are we going to do now? But as I'm sitting here last night and I'm writing and I'm doing stuff and I just hear it pouring and I'm like, Oh, McNally's got to be miserable right now.
You know, I felt like, as they were trying to film it, I felt like one of those poor reporters for the local television stations, you know, in the pre-hurricane conditions with the weather gear. And they're, I'm out here getting blown off the dock to tell you the perfectly obvious thing that the weather stinks. You know, I mean, you know, I felt like one of those poor guys, you know, but we've had fun.
That's good.
I'd rather be on location than, you know, kind of, you know, doing computer work or sitting behind a desk. So I'm okay about it.
That's kind of where I've been as of lately. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where we get to live vicariously through your experience. So we're very, very grateful about that. Now, Jeff, you're also here, kind of representing the Adorama side of
I am
most
doing
of the
that.
stuff.
Yes, I was in Miami with Joe for the One Light, Two Light tour. We did Canada a few weeks ago.
Okay.
And we'll be heading to Portland on Sunday.
Nice.
So it was great to be part of that and see all the people that came out. It was a great crowd.
That's awesome. That's very cool. Now, listen, let's just talk about a couple more housekeeping things. If you want to watch Joe and you want to watch Scott Kelby, I've got a tour out there. Matt's out there as well. The best place for you to go is to go to kelbytraininglive.com. That's the place where you can watch all of the different seminars and you can find who's coming to your city, right? There we have the One Light, Two Light tour. You're going to Portland and you're going to Phoenix. Mm-hmm. We have Sacramento and Denver. Sacramento is on the 22nd and the 29th. You're going to Hartford. That's not too far from where you are.
Yeah, just close by.
So that'll be very, very cool. And Matt's out in Seattle and St. Louis. Guys, if you want to watch this live, that's the place to go. You want to make sure that you go there. Second topic, housekeeping. Photo walk has been announced. Right? We're doing the photo walk this year again, right? 5th year in a row. If you want to participate, make sure that you go to worldwidephodowalk.com. The cities have been just blowing up, absolutely blowing up. Just to give you a statistical reference, scroll up here for a second. Let me just show you something. Last year we had over 1,100 cities.
Wow.
For the walk, right? We're 1 week into this, and there's already 729 different walks that have been signed up. So this is just taking off.
It's phenomenal.
It's a great event. It's a great event. If you want to get out and you want to socialize, it's completely free. We just want you guys to come out and just do some photography and just go out there and have fun.
It's a blast. I participated. It's a blast.
You know, now,
you learn a lot.
What'd you do? In DC? The mall?
Yeah, I with around the mall, but I don't remember who the instructor
Jeff Linebaugh run it, or maybe?
Jeff Ravel?
Jeff Ravel. Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice. Very, very cool. So, and just around the mall area?
Just around the mall in the Sino Canal. It was fun.
Very, very cool. Okay. Not bad. I'm actually just doing one here in Tampa. I'm like, I'd rather be doing it in New York, but it's one of those things where I'm like, I got to kind of control my flying, because if not, I'll just forever have my cot over in the garage. So it's one of those things where it's going to be a good time. But make sure you join us at www.worldwidephodowalk.com. The last thing is we're all headed to Vegas. So Photoshop
soon.
World. Very soon, extremely soon.
Make
sure you take a look at it. It's in about 2 weeks. Make sure you go to www.photoshopworld.com. That's where some of the world's. Oh, there you are. Look, in the middle of the Men in Black.
Sport jacket.
Yeah, I wore a plaid sport jacket. I didn't get the memo that we were all supposed to wear black.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. Even Moose had like a black bolo leather tie or something like that.
I know.
I don't know if he did. I don't think he wore a bolo tie, but it sounds like it's good at the time.
Well, you know, what can I say? Always been the class clown, you know.
Hey, but you know what? It stands out. It stands out. I like it. But anyway, that's all of the stuff, right? And there's tons of comments that are coming in right now. People wish that they could go. Photo walk stuff. There's, Abilene, Texas is filling up for the photo walk. So all of that stuff is... It's going to be a great time. I'm very, very happy about that. Now, enough banter. Let's talk a little bit about photographic history. Let me talk to you. Let's explain about where all of this stuff comes from. More often than not, whenever we talk on the grid, we're always talking about, new techniques. Here's this new person, and here's this new technique. And I wanted to kind of spend some time talking to you guys about where you guys got your photographic starts. Like where, when you picked up a camera, who did you look at? Where did you get that kind of inspiration?
I kind of got inspired by myself. When I was 13, 14, I was a ball boy for pro tennis, Rod Laver, Stan Smith, and all those kind of things.
Okay.
And there were photographers, and I was sort of interested in it. Next thing I knew, I was shooting tennis pictures when I was a kid. Then I had a picture published when I was about 14, 15 in a local magazine.
Okay.
And it just grew from there.
Okay. So
and
a lot of it
fell
was just,
into it.
On the sports side.
Yeah, on the sports side.
So a lot of it, you were doing the sport, you saw people taking pictures of the sport, and then
I started making black and white prints in my basement and giving them to the athletes, at the events. They loved it.
Nice. Very good. Now, you picked it up school.
Yeah, I wanted to be a journalist. I thought I would become a sports writer. And so I went to the Newhouse School at Syracuse University. I was studying to be, a newspaper reporter, perhaps, And during the course of that curriculum, I was literally forced to take a photography class. And as soon as I took a photography class, I borrowed my father's old camera. It was an old rangefinder camera called a Beauty Light 3. And I started clicking away with that thing. Had, of course, no idea what I was doing, but it really just felt natural in my hands. And I thought, maybe it's time to redirect. Mom and Dad weren't completely on board with the notion, but, they were tolerant of my kind of ramblings about. And at that point, I really never looked back. I rapidly became determined that I was going to be a photographer.
Now, I just out of curiosity, one of the things that I saw that was in common was this entire concept of sport. Right? It was the entire love of sport. Do you feel like it's contributed? The reason that I was very excited about it was because neither of you guys are doing really you've done some sport and stuff like that, but you're doing portraiture, right? You're doing a lot of the small life portraiture and big scale events and things like that. Do you feel like sport contributed a lot to the photography world? Like the love of sport, or was it something that just happened to be there? Or
I think that if you're a photographer and you're a sports fan, or if you're a sports fan and you want to be a photographer, it helps. To know the game to what you're shooting is definitely advantageous into how you're shooting the images. If you're shooting a football game, you're a big football fan, you know what to look for. Mm-hmm. For instance, if you're a baseball fan, the runner's going to go from first to second, you know where the action's going to be. So I think that it's important to know the sport. Okay. If you're a photographer.
Okay. All right. Very, very cool. What about you? Sport. Did the love of sport, did the love of a story, did all of that stuff kind of help? Or was it something that...
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was never completely dedicated to sports. I did have a contract with Sports Illustrated for about 8 years. As I always said, they took it away when they realized I could not shoot sports. That I stunk at it. That I'd be wandering around with my lens in the crowd while they're scoring the winning touchdown. That was a problem. Those kinds of things. But I've always been fascinated, I think, by excellence and the obsession that lies behind being excellent at almost anything. And certainly, like we just witnessed the Olympics. Mm-hmm. I mean, those people labor largely in obscurity for years to get one slender crack at being the best, one moment of recognition. And that, to me, that obsession, that drive is fascinating. So I find that to be subject matter for me, not only in the world of sports, but also perhaps dance or theater or music or science or technology. I mean, as I always say to young photographers, when you take a camera in your hands, it's not just a camera, it's a visa. And it gives you entree into all these different worlds that you would otherwise be not invited to or ignorant of if you didn't show up and say, hey, I'm assigned to shoot some pictures of the leading professor or the best baseball player or whatever it is. That's a really cool aspect of being a photographer.
And I think that's something that is worth kind of investigating and is worth meditating on, the entire concept of having the opportunity to be a photographer. And I think that we don't spend a lot of time. A lot of times it's very easy for us to kind of pick up a camera and just go, all right, I'm a photographer and all that stuff. But there's a lot of responsibility that kind of comes with grabbing that. And there's a lot of responsibility with being able to make those pictures. And I think that you don't really appreciate all of that stuff until you start kind of looking back. And you don't appreciate, until you start finding founts of inspiration historically and things like that. And that's kind of where we're going with all of this kind of stuff. And so we were talking a little bit about Lowengarde earlier. Mm-hmm. How I found Lowengarde was very, very inspirational for me in what I wanted to do with portraiture work. Right.
Sure. I mean, John Lowengarde, who you're referring to, was a legendary photographer at Life magazine who became the director of photography at the magazine, and he was a formidable editor. Good God Almighty, I was so scared of him. Because he would with a couple of sentences, he was so incisive and knowledgeable. He's one of the more insightful people I've ever met when it comes to a pictorial sense of things. He could cut you to ribbons with, you know, a couple of comments, you know. But he was also very provocative. He would get you to think. That was his main job. And, you know, I wrote about it at one point where he was sending me out to photograph nannies, and he had this notion that nannies were this prim and proper English tradition out in Denver, Colorado. I was being sent out there. He goes, well, Joe, nanny's out west. Maybe you could take that English-style nanny and she could be kissing a moose. Not Moose Peterson, a moose, okay? And I kind of like, my head did a tilt-a-whirl, you know, kind of like, what? But I realized afterwards he didn't literally want me to go try to get a nanny to kiss a moose. He wanted me to start thinking about, John's style or proclivity when it came to photographs was to look for peculiarity. He was looking for the odd quality in a photograph, something that set it apart, something that made it distinct, and he tried to push you to think that way, which is what a good editor does. You know? Interesting enough.
Now, who do you follow? Like, are there photographers that you look at? Are there photographers that you follow that you find, you know, inspiring on things that you do?
I look at all of Bill Frakes' work.
Okay.
I look at all of Joe's work, obviously. Some photographers that I looked up to when I was coming up in the sports world, Porter Binks is I think, is an editor now. I think he was one of the greatest sports photographers. I always hung around with him at football games years ago. And I, you know, I was always a Sports Illustrated fan, just like everybody else. So you always went there. Now you can go on the web and look at all their pictures right away, but you always were waiting by the mailbox for that issue to come every week.
Mm-hmm. Porter was always a gentleman too. Porter was a classic Southern gentleman,
and he still is.
He still is, yeah. But when I was working for him, he became an editor at Sports Illustrated. He would call me up and he would use these pithy phrases. He goes, Joe, I showed your pictures today and they loved them. He goes, and that means you're in tall cotton, son, and that's better than being a lost ball in the weeds. And I'd be on their line. I'm like, so that means I did okay, huh? And he goes, yeah, absolutely. Porter was one of the classic, as Jeff indicates, photographers in the sports world, and also an absolute gentleman.
Yep. That's awesome. Hey, here we go. Porter still wants those wings back.
No, you can't have him back. Who brought that up?
Oh, okay. All right.
Brad Moore, you're a bad man. No, I have those wings. They're never getting them back. They've forgotten about them. Thanks for bringing that up, Brad. They're in my garage.
It's a sensitive subject. Come on. Christina J. does have a comment. Joe and Jeff, how did what you learn? How did what you've learned in sports photography help you with photography down the road? Do you feel like it's helped you?
I think that it gives you the eye for action. So you know what you're looking for. You're anticipating what's going to happen. So you're going to see what's going to happen in your head before you're shooting the picture.
Keep your eye on everything.
Everything.
In the event that anything happens.
Everything.
And you know what? And I did want to kind of share some of this stuff because I think that this does bear mentioning. Like if you want to take a look at my computer here, this is what, right? Jeff does now, right? So he does, aside from working for Adorama, I mean, he's also producing great images, right? So you run in the world of sport, you cover events.
And the comedy.
Right? Oh, sports and comedy, right?
This was actually, that last one, that's my niece's wedding last weekend, and I just really loved the picture.
Oh, well, congratulations to her, right?
Yeah.
So sports photography has helped. So knowing how to do this, right? Knowing how to, all right, let's do it this way. Let me just pull this off real quick here. Now, let's see. We'll grab this. We'll move this up here.
Oh, that's great.
Right? I thought that was a cool shot. Now let me go ahead and actually here. Computers. Okay.
You know what you're doing?
Oh. I'm an expert. I've got this.
So I've heard.
If you need any technical help, RC, I'm here for you.
It's on now, Mr. McNally. But, okay, so here we go. So now, does this kind of stuff help you with this kind of stuff? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, you have to kind of chase events. This stuff, knowing when to be able to do this, will almost always help to be able to catch.
No question about it.
This. What about you, Joe? Do you feel like sport goes back to it?
Absolutely. Timing is crucial to virtually anything you do photographically, and sports is like a crucible that you throw yourself into, and your timing better be right on. And also what Jeff mentioned earlier, and I'm sure Jeff would agree, like, with the technology we have today, Jeff and I can go out on the field and we can shoot a pretty good sports picture, right? But the truly great sports photographers, they research their subjects, like
Absolutely.
you indicated earlier. The great sports photographer who knows the games and the teams really well is in the head of the quarterback on 3rd and 17. And they know before the play unfolds where they're going to go. And that really does separate kind of the really great ones from the other, crowd of folks who are out there, who might be quite good. But, I grew up with legendary sports shooters, and Jason Joseph in New York just mentioned on the screen there, Neil Leifer.
Right.
Walter Yost, John Beaver. And these guys were the kings of sport back in the day where you had to follow focus manually. Now, try follow focusing a 400 millimeter lens on a running back who's jinking down the field like this, and you're trying to track that, and there's no autofocus. You've got it. And these guys, I tell you, the best of them had radar.
That's just amazing.
I shot for the Redskins back a long time ago, but the team photographer, I'd walk in and he would hand me 6 rolls of Tri-X for the game. I go, where's the rest of it?
36 exposure rolls, dude.
If I got 20 really sharp pictures, follow focusing like that, I was happy.
Exactly. And also shooting sports for wires, like Jeff was mentioning, shooting the team stuff. I used to shoot sports for the wire services when I was growing up as a press shooter in New York. And you had to be very economical as a wire service guy at that point in time, because you have to remember that if you're shooting a big game, you shoot everything, but you don't ship everything. You'd select your rolls, because there was some poor dude back in a closet that's smaller than the size of this table, slopping Tri-X at ISO 1600 through, hot washes and stuff like that. And the editor, to beat like the AP and UPI, had big competition, trying to get the pictures on the wire first. The editor would actually be editing your negs wet.
Yep.
Okay, they'd have an agfa loop, a fluorescent bar up in the ceiling, and they'd go like this, like a strip of cine film, and they would nail it every time. And then they'd take a punch and clip the edge of the Tri-X, and then give it to the printer, and the printer would print it wet. This stuff was just coming out of solution, slapped into an enlarger, and they'd get their images on the wire. And if they could get there first, that means that their wire service would have better play in the newspapers the next day.
Now, does that translate into the digital world?
Sure. I think there's obviously different forms of transmission now. A lot of the Olympic events, for instance, the cameras are hardwired right back to their editors. All that sort of stuff is going on. Speed of transmission is greatly increased. But the instincts to compete, the instincts to be there first,
those are to shoot shorter.
Yeah.
Shoot shorter, shoot more economical.
Sure.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things that, like, when you think about that, when you think of the historical context of all of this stuff, like, you sit there and you're like, well, what's the relevant point about all of that? How much do we hear the flip side of a lot of the stuff that's very spray and pray? A lot of it is, let's go ahead and cover it with 3,000 images, 4,000 images, let's get and run and do all of that stuff. There's a certain amount of economy that usually helps when obviously you have to cover an event, but to be able to shoot short, to be able to know exactly when you need to shoot, I think is something that is a skill that we tend to focus a lot more on aperture and exposure and a lot of these kinds of things, but we don't tend to focus on, dare I say, decisive moments when we're working with that. And I think that something like that definitely shows a lot of working on your economy. Definitely shows a lot of skill, or you can work a lot of skill on that stuff. So
in the digital world, I've had editors say to me, "You're giving us too many pictures. Take it down a notch." Because, you've got big cards in your camera, so you're not afraid to hit the button. You don't have to change film every 36 frames.
Right.
Nice.
Right. Well, also, if you listen to a truly great photographer like David Burnett, like David at the 1984 Olympics made the picture of the Olympics with Mary Decker, who tripped up with Zola Budd, and she was the favorite. She was America's sweetheart, and she fell during her race, and she did not win the gold. And David was not in a good position. The way all the other photographers wanted to be at the finish line position, he did not get in there. So he drifted up the track and had, quote unquote, a bad position, ended up making the picture of the Olympics. So he tells that story now, and it's like, okay, the runner's doing like an 800 meter run. They go around twice. You've got 36 exposures. Okay, it takes me, what does it take me? It takes me 15 to 20 seconds to dump the roll, put in a new roll. They're running this way. They're going to be around in another 40 seconds. Okay, all that math that had to go through your head as a film photographer with a 36 exposure cassette in your camera, that's largely been, those fears have been allayed now with a 32 gig card.
It's gone.
But those strategies of competing and being incisive, as Jeff says, stay with you.
Nice. Very, very cool. Now, let's go ahead and I want to break it up a little bit because I do want to spend a little bit more time talking about history, but in the middle of all of this stuff, we've gotten a series of images that I kind of want to show you guys and I want to have you guys critique. I've done my best to get rid of any kind of markings of who they are, and we have a bunch of them here, so we'll go ahead and we'll bring up a couple of them and see what you guys think here. So the first image that we have is this one. I wanted to get your take on that. I'll start with you, Mr. Snyder.
As a portrait, it's okay. I mean, I don't see anything. I'm not gonna. It's also hard to see here. I like it. I like it. It's sharp in his eyes. His eyes stand out to me.
Okay. All right, Joe.
Pretty edgy portrait. There is a quality of light. There's a really sharp catch light in the eye. So there's kind of an edged light here. Again, I'm a little bit out of my depth when I see things that feel to me like they've been post-processed a fair amount. There's a fair amount of contrast and pop to this. It's a pretty riveting portrait. The background is intriguing to me without me being even to really kind of discern exactly what it is. And I'm also I enjoy design elements in photographs, and the hat and the hood creating kind of this almost circular kind of effect, and then his chin coming back up. There's sort of a design within a design pattern there that helps you stay with the face. And it's got a portrait that has some gravitas to it, so I kind of enjoy it.
Yeah, I thought the portrait was actually really good, but I thought that this section of the portrait was actually taking away from it. Yeah, whenever I have a dark color in a portrait, I always feel like it closes it up. So everything, like the end of the picture, is closed up right here.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden, I feel like it pulled me out over here. So I didn't see it until you said it, the entire picture within a picture, and I'm like, yeah, you kind of dance right inside of here. You dance inside of this one section, and
that's
then I feel like I got pulled out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
intriguing background. I'd be curious to know exactly what it is.
It looks like a cracked wall.
Let's see this one. Let's see. Okay. Let's go ahead and let me see if we can zoom in here. Oh no, it looks like that's about as big as it's gonna get.
Okay. Hard to completely see it because at this scale on the screen, it's a little hard.
Let's try this.
Let me lean over here.
Oh. Yeah. You were just looking for that excuse, weren't you? I know you were just looking for that. There we go. How's that?
All right, cool. All right, rimlet portrait in a space looks like because
it's an art museum, maybe.
Yeah, some sort of art installation. A lot of chrome and shiny stuff going on at night. Pretty well handled exposure. The graphics of the picture sort of overtake the intent of it a little bit. I'm wondering who that person is. Like, is it a person there for scale who has nothing to do with that particular sculpture or art installation, or if it's someone significant that we need to know about? I feel they should be much, much closer to the camera, to the lens, so that we could be informed about this person a little bit better. I do like the graphics of it. There's certainly a lot of color going on, a lot of repetitive shapes and whatnot. The backlighting works pretty well in terms of gathering interest, though that hot spot, I think it would have been better served to hide that, to put it behind one of those girders or pieces of sculpture so that it's not completely blaring at me.
Yeah, and Jeff, what do you think?
I like the lights from the city in the background. I think that helps bring the whatever this sculpture is out even more.
And see, the thing that stood out to me here was that it definitely looks like what they were going for. The intent was to have this person framed by all of this stuff that was around them. But for me, what I was thinking was, I'm just going to go ahead and just draw a red square right here. if this person had walked up and that person occupied this portion of the frame right here, then you would have kind of killed two problems.
Sure.
You could have put the rim light behind them, kind of still had a similar effect, and still had the same framing that happens here, here, and here, and here. So it still would have done the same thing.
And get rid of that bright light.
Yeah. And it would have knocked out the bright light. So it's a good one. Let's do one more, and then we'll go to a break real quick here. Let's go ahead and come back over here, and I'll take a look at this. And this one stood out to me, which I thought was kind of cool. What do we think, Mr. Snyder?
I like it. It's like a dark portrait, but I like the lighting. I think he stands out.
Okay, Joe.
Strong, simple portrait. You know, your eye has no place else to go. So, you know, you go right to his eyes, his face, you sort of encounter him, you deal with him. It's a little bit evocative to me of a portrait artist who did a lot of covers of Time magazine named William Coupon, who did a lot of one-light portraits on painted backdrops that were very much in vogue. He, you know, did heads of state and presidents and all of that for Time magazine, and he probably shot maybe 40 or 50 covers of Time over the years, and it was a consistent approach, a one-light, generally speaking, camera left portrait style against a painted backdrop. And this portrait has an evocation for me of that kind of style, simplicity in terms of approach, allowing you to do nothing but deal with the intensity of your subject.
Yeah, I thought it was great. It was just it was very clean,
simple and clean. Yeah,
and clean's good. Clean's good sometimes when it comes to that kind of stuff.
I also enjoy, to be honest, I enjoy a square format.
Okay.
I don't shoot hardly any medium format anymore, but when I had film systems, I did shoot a great deal of Mamiya RZ, and I would oftentimes drop a square format back into that because I really like, for portraiture like this, I really enjoy the square format. It's a wonderful kind of way to corral the human face.
Nice, very, very cool. I enjoy that. Thank you very much. Now, let's go ahead and do this. Let's take a quick break. We have a couple of things. We have a couple of giveaways that we want to do. I kind of want to spend a little bit more time talking about just historical things, and we want to be able to review your questions and your images. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Wait to do this again.
For more than 25 years, Peachpit has been home to the world's best authors and continues to publish the best books, ebooks, videos, and apps. Whether you're an aspiring or established photographer, Peachpit is here to help you learn new techniques and inspire your creativity. Peachpit, the future looks creative.
Welcome back to The Grid. My name is RC. I'm here with Mr. Joe McNally and Mr. Jeff Snyder from Adorama. Guys, I just wanted to talk to you guys about a couple of different giveaways that we have for today. So Drop It Modern is giving away something, but it would be important for us to be able to mention to you that they are offering 40% off on the bag that they're offering for their giveaway. Live in this episode, make sure that you take a look at them at dropitmodern.com. So that's one of the things. And also, Adorama is giving away a bag as well.
We are. We're going to give away the new Think Tank.
The Think Tank
What's
Foresight.
it called? Foresight.
The Foresight. I've been using the Foresight. Actually, I thought it was a really, really nice bag.
It's a really nice wheelie bag. I would use it all through Canada and right through the airports, no problem. Fit in every plane.
Nice.
Although one of the flight attendants didn't think it would fit. It fit.
It did fit.
I knew it would
fit. It did fit. Well, thank you very much on behalf of Adorama. You guys can enjoy the bag. So 2 bags for 2 different types of people, and we'll go ahead and we'll have Nancy work with that a little bit later on. Now, let's continue the conversation. Right?
Okay.
So let's continue to talk about history. So we've talked about who we've gone to in the past and why it's important, and a little bit of the background. Who did you find when you were kind of coming up in photography? Who did you find that you were looking at? Like, what was your inspiration?
Well, when I was in school, I gravitated very heavily towards the work of W. Eugene Smith.
Okay.
And when I left school, I kind of wanted to be W. Eugene Smith. And he was a brilliant photographer, kind of a crazy man a bit, and really the originator of the style or photographic construct we generally refer to now as the photo essay. He did famous photo essays for Life magazine, Spanish Village, Nurse Midwife Maud Callan, Country Doctor. Those are classics in the field, you know. And then, of course, I came out of school and I got dropped into the hurly-burly of New York City tabloid journalism. You know, I was a copy boy at the New York Daily News, and I got to learn that side of it, which was not a considered approach in terms of doing a lengthy story for a magazine. It was day to day, knock it out, tomorrow's paper kind of shooting. And there were people there who were very good at that. One of them was Danny Farrell, who became my mentor. He was really the dean of press photography in New York City. Mm-hmm. So
those all of these people that we're talking about, right? There's a lot of information that's out there, and we kind of just wanted to leave this as kind of an open-air chat for all of you. We will take every single link that we have here on all of these, classic photographers that you can watch, and we'll go ahead and we'll put them in the show notes so that all of you can do that. It's probably going to be very hard for Brad or for Pete to just kind of start finding all these people and just dropping them in there in the list.
Get to work.
So what we'll do is make sure that you rewatch this episode when it airs, and we'll go ahead and we'll start adding those into the comments, and we'll say, these are the links, these are the people that you need to talk to. For me, a lot of my photography, it was really weird because I got into the photography side of it through literature. Right. Mm-hmm. And I was telling you the story, and I said, I'm going to tell you that story later. I'll tell you that story later. I was supposed to be an English teacher, right? So I actually was supposed to be a deaf ed teacher. And in the middle of all of that stuff, I got accepted to go to school in upstate New York, and I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford to go. But through high school, I became a big fan of beat poetry. Mm-hmm. So I was a big fan of beatnik poetry, William Carlos Williams, Allen Ginsberg, Sylvia Plath, all that kind of stuff. And I remember saying to myself, Allen Ginsberg, the father of beat poetry, right, Howl and all that kind of stuff, teaches at City University of New York in Brooklyn. And I said, you know what? I want to go learn from the master. I want to go learn how to write and do essays and things like that from the master. So you know what? Forget about going to school upstate New York. Forget about it all. I live in the Bronx. I'll go to Brooklyn for school. And I took the train, took all of that stuff, and I went all the way down to Brooklyn College to go apply for the first thing. And I'm standing in line, check in hand, everything is all ready to go learn from the master. And I get called up, and the lady's like right in front of me. And I sit there and I go, I don't want to go here. I have as much as I want to learn from her, I don't want to go here. And I'm looking at the lady, and the lady's looking at me, she's like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, can I just leave? Can I just leave? And will my grades be okay to get me back? And she's like, yeah, your grades are fine. You're going to be okay. And I turned around and I left. And I remembered I had a Ginsberg book with me. And I was like, you know what? Not yet. Not yet. I took off. I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken. I sat down, and I was just like, all right, well, what do I do now? I just finished doing a 180 on my life, and I don't know what I'm going to do. So, but I was always obsessed with Ginsberg, and one of the first pictures that I saw of all of that stuff was a very, very cloudy, foggy picture of Ginsberg. And as it turns out, that picture was by Loengard. So it was one of the first pictures that I saw of somebody who I appreciated from a visual standpoint. Loengard happened to be the photographer that did that. So that got me started into some of the photography, which then, for some reason, I did a weird jump into like Magnum. So I was looking at a lot of Magnum photography, which at that point in time, I want to say, maybe early 90s or something like that. So I start going through all that stuff, and I go through school, and I'm looking, and then I run into National Geographic magazines, and I run into you. A couple of years later, and more than a couple of years later, I run into, oh, look, there you go. Brad's got the Loengard picture. There you go, johnloengard.com. It's right on his website. I'll go ahead and I'll pull that up so you guys can take a look at that. And then after that, Faces to 9/11 came out, and on comes from. But it was weird because it was like through literature. So literature got me to black and white pictures. Black and white pictures got me into National Geographic. That got me into you. That got me into the Scott Kelby world. So it was kind of very, very haphazard way of kind of getting around it. But then since then, like I'm a big fan of Bresson. I'm a big fan of Newman, Arnold Newman. Probably one of the most important pictures for me was Stravinsky's.
Sure.
Stravinsky's portrait. And you've shot Newman, didn't you?
I did. Wonderful man. I was very nervous when I went into his studio, and I was trying to actually mimic his light. He would oftentimes use kind of reflected flat light and put it on either side of his subject. So I posed him on a posing stool in the middle of his studio, and I photographed him that way. And he made me feel very at ease. He was very gracious, and he signed his book for me, or one of his books. I still have it, and I remember to this day. It's very important to me. He wrote in the foreword of the book, he said, to Joe McNally, who has turned the tables on me today, and quite nicely. And I was like, whoa,
Very nice.
Whoa. So what a wonderful, gracious thing to say to a nobody of a photographer. I mean, this was Arnold Newman,
Oh my goodness, that'd be great. All right, well, so the picture that I was talking about, Newman's picture, that's the picture. So that's the picture of Stravinsky, which a lot of the times it's just a great example to show people. It's like when you think of, taking a picture of a pianist. It's a great way to make sure. It's just a wonderful, wonderful portrait. It's one of the things that I always look back to whenever I'm making it. And it's wild because I shoot a lot of HDR. I shoot a lot of over-processed, over-crunched, hyper-colored stuff. And I'm very grateful. I do well at it, and it does really cool, and it's a cool style. But this is what keeps drawing me back to it. This kind of portraiture is what I kind of long to do. So I have like this whole section of work that I'm working on that has just very little post-processing. It's more about moment. So it's funny how this kind of stuff still kind of fuels a lot of what I do from an HDR standpoint. I still admire this, but I toil at something else. And secretly, I chisel out a good body of work that does this stuff.
Sure.
Okay, so here we go. So when we're talking about John Loengard, the people that matter to us, this is the shot. I remember seeing that, and I was like, oh man, that's like the coolest picture. I was like, that's it. To know Ginsberg's work is to know that this is pretty much how it is. So phenomenal work here too. I mean, aside from that, it's just amazing, amazing work, right? That's Annie Leibovitz, isn't it?
Yep.
And her assistant.
Yep. Chrysler Gargoyle, where Margaret Burke White was very famously photographed as well.
Right. And this is Bresson's eye.
Yep. John has a really wonderful reverence for the photographers who are of his era and have gone before, and he celebrates that. He has a wonderful book. If anybody is interested in really seriously pursuing photography, I would highly recommend one of his books. It's called Pictures Under Discussion. He also did a wonderful book where he actually photographed historically important black and white negatives. And that was also a wonderful book and an important book. So Loengard is formidable, and he coached and influenced a lot of photographers who are, over the years, have become important, like Gregory Heisler. Greg shot his first cover of Life magazine, the cooling towers from 3 Mile Island, from that nuclear disaster many years ago. That was Greg's first cover of Life, and he shot it for John.
Wow. Now here are the two books that we're talking about. The great thing about these, a lot of these books you can find. I mean, there's a ton of these books that are available. This is not available now. You have to find a really, really good version. I mean, you got to do a little bit of digging. Pictures Under Discussion is one of the books. The book that you're talking about, I think there's one book that's out there now, Age of Silver. Which is a great, great, great book, and it's one of those things where you just kind of just sit there and I'm just kind of peruse it. That's actually Avedon on the cover.
Right.
So two wonderful books to be able to get into this. And now also Brad just finished pointing out that Loengard does have a guest blog post. Make sure that you go to scottkelby.com. He has done a guest blog post there as well. So great work, wonderful bit of historical information. Let's go ahead and do another critique. Guys, if you guys have questions also, I know that a lot of you guys are just kind of just sitting back and just listening to all of this stuff, and we're very grateful for that. But if you have any questions, make sure that you leave them in the chat. We'll go ahead and we'll pop a couple of other images for you to take a look at, and we'll start with this one. What do we think?
Wow. You know, it's definitely odd.
It looks like a Harry Potter
Yeah, it's
fairy tale kind of thing.
Two young ladies who are, using a candle light their way, and there's looks like gravestones and kind of, skulls and bones and things like that, off in what appears to be kind of a leafy environment there. Leads me to wonder exactly, how this was put together. Is it done as a composite? Is it done on location? The fact that it's intriguing. I mean, I don't think it completely works, but the fact that it's intriguing and makes you go, "Hey, wait a minute," that's kind of half the battle with a photograph is to get somebody to notice.
Stop. Yeah.
What do you guys think?
It almost looks like the cover of a book for a children's story.
To me, it felt like an event. It felt like almost kind of like this was a play, almost.
Could
like
be.
they kind of caught the play because everybody's just kind of dressed up a little bit like a play. But the one thing that kind of stood out to me is sometimes when we work on pictures, I'm trying to figure out the best way, the briefest way to be able to say this. When we work on pictures, sometimes I think we work a little too hard on the definition of the story. I think sometimes we turn around and we say, this has, if you look at it, gesture, right? Gesture, intention, and story, and what do we want to do? And I think that photographers sometimes look at it a little bit too much, think about what the intention is a little too much. And what happens is, and we have a meetup group, and people are like, oh, well, what I was thinking was this person is scared, and this person's being chased by this, and this person's going to do this. And it's like, it's a little too much. It's a little too much where when you're looking at it, it's like, you've told too much of the story, so much so that the elements start competing against each other. It's like, is it fear? Is it this? What are they supposed to be looking at? I feel like they took the entire concept of the story and made it a little too literal. So that's
a good observation.
So, let's see. Let's take a look at another one here.
That picture kind of the opposite in some ways of the previous photograph that we looked at, which was the essence of simplicity. No questions there. It was very obvious the intent.
Okay, how about that one?
You missed a spot. That's what he's saying, right?
Yeah, it does look like you missed a spot.
Yeah. Again, there's some interesting imagination going on out here with the way some of these photographs are coming together.
And just let me just back up here for a second. I didn't want to just pick pictures that we all collectively knew were going to be like, But at the same time, I wanted to pick pictures that, like, I wanted people to kind of get an education of all of this stuff because this person's out there shooting this.
Yeah, yeah. Or you could just end that sentence saying, this person's out there.
And you can just add the dot right there.
Yeah, again, it certainly kind of gives you pause and makes you, intrigued, or you're trying to guess what is going on here. You can make maybe a fairly reasonable guess at things. A limo driver or car wash, this lady who happens to be kind of dressed up in kind of a theatrical style dress and theatrical makeup, for some reason is polishing this man's car.
88 Oldsmobile.
An 88. Well, there you go. Well, there's,
wow. Bringing up the rear, Jeff Snyder with the 88 Oldsmobile. Advice?
I think
aside from don't do this again.
Yeah, I could hark back to what you just said a minute ago about simplicity. Simplicity rules. If I manage to get a picture published in the National Geographic, or the stories, when they get drilled down to the final 15, 20, 30 photographs that are going to actually hit the magazine, I find that they have to function on 3 levels. They have to function informationally. In other words, move the reader down the road a little bit, in terms of the information of the story. They have to function pictorially. In other words, they got to work as a photograph. And then they have to involve the reader emotionally. And I find the best way to do that is to make simple declarative photographs. That really kind of, I would love to have this person, whoever it is, I think they actually need to be here to narrate this photograph. And you have to remember, when you send your pictures out into the world, you're not there to narrate them. When pictures hit a magazine, ink on paper, they go to somebody you'll never meet. And that picture, when they open the page, has to sit there and talk to them. And the message can't be muddled. And here I find myself there's almost a wall in front of me trying to drill into this picture, and I'm wondering, what's the intent? Why is this done? Where, there's no cohesion to the message of this photograph.
How I look at portraiture with stuff is, I tend to have a very simplistic way of looking at portraiture. I don't know if it necessarily works or not, but I always take a look at the essence of the person. I always say, you photograph the essence of the person to either celebrate or demonize. You're either celebrating a person or demonizing a person, one of the two. But more often than not, I tend to want to celebrate a person. And if I were the woman in this picture and I saw this, I'd be pissed. Because this doesn't make her look good at all. There's no reason for her to be on the car.
I don't get it.
Waxing it in that kind of, there's no reason for her to be there. If she were dressed as a car wash attendant, then that would make sense.
Could work.
It could work, but she's not. So why is she there? It doesn't make him look any good because he looks like he's ordering her around to be able to do that. So it doesn't celebrate him either. It actually makes both of them look pretty bad.
It's not a nice relationship, it doesn't, as you say, it doesn't hold either of them up into a particularly good light.
Right. So unless that's what you intended, if you wanted to piss those two people off, you probably did a really good job. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at this one.
I can't tell what it is.
Ooh, Andrew Tomasino jumps in with a really, really good comment there. People are too quick to get a pretty girl in front of a camera with no intent other than to photograph a pretty girl.
Oh, Andrew, thank you.
Way to go, Andrew.
Yep.
Knew we could count
Andrew,
on you, dude.
There we go. All right. Good job. Should the photographer care about the model's feelings if he got the shot that he wanted? Absolutely. Me personally, I absolutely believe that the photographer should care about whether or not he got the shot. When you're shooting a picture, I think it's a partnership. You're working with that person. Yep. If you're going at it, as in, you know what, I'm gonna make you, dance monkey while I take a picture, you're going about it for the wrong reasons. Then they're performing for you, and that's not photography. Joe, what do you think?
Well, I think there is, as you mentioned, and this is just me speaking personally, I feel there's a bond that's created between the photographer and the subject, and the photographer always has to remember that that space in front of their lens is a very vulnerable place to be. And so when someone steps into that space for you and with you, they are taking a leap of faith on your abilities and also trusting your instincts to take care of them, not only in terms of rendering them in an interesting way, but also in terms of the management of their image afterwards. So there is a lot going on that is sort of complex and emotional at a photo shoot. Not always necessarily, but you know, it can be, you know, one of those things that has lasting impact on someone's life. And you have to remember that. And there's all sorts of shades of that, of course, you know, but I also believe in disclosure. When I go to ask someone to get in front of the camera, I tell them entirely my intent. I don't have a hidden agenda. I tell them, if I'm photographing them for a magazine, I tell them, okay, this is what could happen. This photograph could be used, or it could not be used. It could be a cover. If it's a cover, there could be attention that will accrue to you. I will need you to sign a release. I will be managing your picture in this way. And that, to me, has power and legacy. You know, I have a 10-year or more than that relationship with folks I met in the immediacy of 9/11. And I came back to photograph them for the 10-year anniversary. And one of the reasons they welcomed me back into their lives was that in that 10-year period, none of those photographs had been used in an untoward way. I had taken care of their images and respected them.
Right. Jeff, what do you think? Do we owe it to the model to care?
I think so. I mean, you have to care about how he or she feels about the image that you're making of them. You don't want them to look bad in bad lighting. You want them to be happy with the images that you're making. They're going to feel better. They're going to perform better for you if they feel that they're getting an image of them that's pleasing.
Awesome. Very cool. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break. We got one more break in. After that, we're going to do a couple more questions. We're going to take a look at a couple more pictures, leave you with some links, and share with you some contest stuff. Take care.
My name's Joe McNally. For Kelby Training, I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia. In this class, we capture dancers in the air at the peak of their flight. We ask them to create their most important, their most powerful move, and I'm going to show you how to get that move and photograph it with big flash, small flash, from the simple to the complex. Here, I can show you right here. Here's Gilbert. He's an amazing dancer. He just did this fantastic leap, but he's not the best dancer we worked with. Here's the best dancer we worked with. Come check out my class, Dancers in Flight, Beautiful Light, at kelbytraining.com.
Welcome back, everybody, to The Grid. RC here with Jeff Snyder and Mr. Joe McNally, talking a little bit about history, talking a little bit about inspiration. David Shepard just wrote in and says, how does the panel feel about college educational systems for photography/art, and what organizations like kelbytraining.com are doing to move it forward? Is one better than the other, or both? Do you teach at a university, or do you plan to join one later in his career? That's a lot of questions. So what do you think about school? What do you think about school? What do you think about online training stuff?
I think, you know, the ongoing process of education as a photographer is important, and I already used this word, ongoing. I mean, I think you have to keep filling your head. I think you have to keep feeding your eye and your heart and your mind. They'll all come into play when you have a camera in your hands. I took Jay Mazel's workshop, a couple years ago, thinking about a couple of other workshops that I will take. And I've been doing this a long time, but I'm still almost feverish in the way that you can continue to learn. That's the great thing about having a camera in your hands. It's so surprising, so vexing and frustrating, and you feel inadequate so often, and then you turn a corner and then you get a good photograph, and it's a bumpy road. And one of the things that sustains you, I think, is ongoing education.
Now, if you guys have liked this kind of stuff and you want to be able to see this on a very, very large scale in one of the most beautiful places on earth, Joe, where can they go? What are you working on now?
Well, as a matter of fact, RC,
I'm sorry, I can't think of a better way to be able to say this.
Nice segue.
It's just, I've been bouncing at my seat. I'm just gonna go ahead and pull the website up. So, tell us about this. Well,
RC and I are teaching together in one of the most beautiful places on earth, St. Lucia, the Enchantenay Jade Mountain Hotel in St. Lucia, near Soufriere in the Caribbean, and it's one of those rare things. It's about history. I was sent there originally many years ago, '92 I think it was, to shoot a cover for Travel Holiday magazine. Long story short, got to know the folks who own the place, got along well with them, shot some pictures for them. I'm currently working on a book for the resort, so I return on a regular basis, and once a year we get a chance to bring some folks there, and I'm always blessed to be able to bring in a phenomenal, wonderful fellow instructor. Oh. And this year it's RC, and we're gonna go into the flora and the fauna and the jungle and the beautiful color. You're gonna teach some HDR, lead some class excursions, do the post-processing, which I cannot teach. I'll be doing lighting and talking about how to handle exposure, extremes of light in the tropics, all that sort of stuff. We'll be doing flash and blur in the jungle with jungle bikers and this and that.
Oh, show some pictures. I want to see some of the pictures on St. Lucia, because it was one of those things where obviously I was very, very honored to get a chance to be able to talk about all of this stuff in St. Lucia, but I'm just happy to be able to work in such a beautiful environment.
Yeah.
That does not suck.
No, it's not. There's nothing to not like about the place. It's absolutely wonderful. There's a quick lighting picture that we did last year where we lit from the inside of one of the rooms, if you could call it room. That's kind of a simplistic kind of way to describe these sort of almost villas that look out on the Piton Mountains. Then there's an air view. I've done a lot of helicopter work down there in the Caribbean. Love to work with pilots out in the islands. They kind of rock and roll a bit more so than they do in places like New York or in the States. And then they gave me we were doing this book for the hotel, and they gave me this impossibly wonderfully beautiful couple, and they actually are a couple. I believe they're married now, and so they posed for us as prospective brides and grooms. So I was able to work with them and move things around, show some details, this and that, and there's a good way to end kind of a relaxing picture. It's a pretty great place.
So the workshop is happening from what time to what time?
September 30th through I think October 6th. I think you might have the website up there, perhaps.
We're going to go to joemcnally.com.
And
I'll go ahead and we'll bring that up. But that's where you would get all of the information. So if you want more information about all of this, make sure you take a look at joemcnally.com. Take a look at the blog post. It's going to be a wonderful time.
You can also email my studio manager, Lynn, Lynn, at joemcnally.com. And she's got information. She'll in turn direct you to the hotel, and they can answer all the questions.
Awesome.
There's some great hands-on shooting the entire week. It's just phenomenal.
Jeff Snyder, the man, was our guest instructor last year. And
it was quite the experience.
He did an amazing job.
About it.
That's awesome. I can't wait.
You sure you want to go?
Yeah,
Are you sure?
Are you certainly want to go. I most certainly want to go. All right, so let's take a look at a couple of different things. Let me tell you a little bit about some of the giveaways that we have for today. Right, there are 3 different giveaways. Peach Pit is offering 40% off of Barry and X's book. Right, so Barry and X Perello's book out, and we're going to be giving away this as well. That is also from Barry and X. This is the Canon 5D Mark III, from Snapshots to Great Shots DVD. So make sure if you want to take advantage of Peach Pit's discount, go to peachpit.com/KelbyTV and enter in their code. So there's the ebook deal that we see right there. Thank you very, very much to Peach Pit. So make sure that you enter in the code KelbyTV. That's going to get you 40% off of that book as well as this DVD. We're going to give this DVD away to one person. We're also going to give away, Adorama's giving away, thank you very much, by the way, to Adorama. Giving
four-wheel.
away.
What's it called? I can't even remember the name of it. Foresight.
It's the Foresight. So I love that bag. And Drop It Modern. Drop It Modern. Take a look at this. This is actually pretty cool. Watch this.
It's old school.
Yeah. It's like old-timey camera bag.
My grandfather's stereo Kodak was in a case just like I have in the basement.
Exactly.
Look at this.
Wow.
That's actually kind of neat.
Cool. That is old school.
And then your camera kind of goes in there. So
Nice.
Your stereo camera.
all right. I thought that was kind of cool. I'm gonna have to get a little mustache wax. The inner hipster in me is gonna be pumped to use that bag. So anyway, so 3 things. So how do they win all of this stuff, Nancy? What do we do?
Okay, in a few seconds, I am going to turn the comments off, so they'll be moderated. And what you are going to do is you are going to put your name and your email into a comment, and then pick one of the prizes, either the Drop It Modern bag, Iberian X Pirellos, Canon 5D Mark III from Snapshots to Great Shots. Of course, you don't have to say all that. You can just say DVD, or the Think Tank bag from Adorama, and hit submit. And then after the show, we will go through and we will pick winners and we will email the winners. And the comments are under moderation, so you can start entering now.
Nice, very, very cool. And well, why don't we wrap it up by doing a couple more things? I'm still stuck on St. Lucia. I'm like, oh, wow, that's gonna be great. Wonderful. All right, here, bring that purple picture back up. That's gonna be me right there, baby.
Which, this one here?
Right there, that's gonna be me, and if you wanna be there with me, that's fine, Joe.
Can I make a suggestion?
That's totally okay.
Mango margaritas on the beach.
Really?
Yes.
Mango margaritas on the beach? Okay. I'm doing it. That's gonna be great. Now, back to this picture real quick. What do we think?
I can't figure it out.
Okay. Well, Jeff brings up a good point. It's a funny picture in the sense that it's simple and busy at the same time. The garment, the star-spangled garment, the brick wall, etc. The fact that you can't really maintain eye contact because the hair and the attitude of the subject all kind of conspire to kind of make the photograph a little bit less than it could have been, perhaps, because your eye doesn't completely know where to go. She's also dropped. I think it would have been more powerful if she had slid up the wall a little bit. Rule of thirds might have been better employed here, perhaps. She is drifting towards the middle or bullseye area of the photograph. The right-hand side of the photograph, that brick wall, while it's nice texture, is not doing you a great deal of good. I would have maybe pushed in a little bit tighter and also tried to maintain or establish some sort of intensity to this person by having them lift their head, maybe seeing maybe even one of their eyes. And the background to me is also somewhat inconsequential. I find myself looking back down there, but not really knowing exactly what it is. It's not a bad collection of pieces, but I think they're put together in a somewhat confusing way.
Okay.
Agreed.
Agreed? I'd agree completely. Chad McCormick writes, what makes a compelling photo, Joe?
Oh, Lord. About, it could mean many, many things, obviously. But I'll cite Eddie Adams, who was a dear friend who is no longer with us. Eddie made the Pulitzer Prize-winning photograph of the execution of the suspected Viet Cong prisoner during the Vietnam conflict. But Eddie felt that a good picture was any picture that reached, as he used to put it in a somewhat indelicate way, just reached inside your chest cavity and basically grabbed your heart and ripped it out of your chest. That was, to him, a powerful picture. I photographed someone who survived the Vietnam War. She was called the Napalm Girl, Kim Phuc. Many years later, with her baby Thomas, showing her burns from the napalm attack. And when that picture got published, a mentor of mine, Dick Stolley, who was the managing editor who started People magazine, called me up and he said, Joe, that picture was like a slap in the face. And I considered that high praise. You know, if you can come up with a photograph that moves someone, that probably is the best bottom line for describing a compelling photograph.
Okay, very, very good. Here's our one of the last ones.
Okay.
And I bring this up because you're familiar with this. Like, this is a part of a Kelby training class. Like, you talked about this concept a little bit.
For sure, it looks like a multiple flash with some blurring kind of techniques, maybe a bit of a lengthy exposure with 2 flashes involved, maybe at the starting position of the dancer and the finishing position of the dancer, and you know, pretty interesting. I mean, obviously vibrant color, the rendering of it, the technique of it is done actually, I think, pretty well. The camera angle or approach, my sensibilities would say I would move the camera a little bit lower and look up at the dancer more. That foreground, you know, area at her feet is not helping all that much. One of the things that I find that's a good thing to do with any sort of stroboscopic or motion type of picture is to move the camera down so the horizon line is minimized. So you're not actually looking down at the dancer, you're actually looking up, makes the dancer more important and minimizes any other kinds of confusion.
Let's go ahead and just, let's see if we can pull this image up right here. So you actually shot this. So here's this.
And I actually shot it of your wife.
So here, let me go ahead and pull this shot up here. So that's the shot right there where we were talking about. So that's actually my wife Jen posing for Joe. So
Jen's a wonderful dancer. I have always loved working with her. She's so giving in terms of being an artist. She takes your piece of photographic imagination and she physicalizes it, which is what is the wonderful thing a dancer can do for you, because they are, you know, we might be, you know, have all this raging imagination behind the lens, but we then need the dancer to physicalize that and express it in ways that mere mortals, you and me, would not look good in that photograph. Nor would you, Jeff. I think.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, probably not.
You know,
no offense.
But
No,
Jen
I'm right there with you.
embodied it, you know, and that was a stroboscopic approach. That was a 3-part picture with a flash to start, a flash to finish, and a stroboscopic stream of motion in between. But I think the picture we just saw, if there was a measure of inspiration from that to the person's photograph we just saw, they're on a really good track. I think that the beginnings of that are pretty well done.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much for the comments. Thank you very much for the critiques on most of this stuff. Guys, if you want to follow us, make sure that you follow us on Twitter. Make sure that you follow us on Google+. My Google+ is over at gplusrc.com or rcgplus.com. Either one of them will work. Joe, if they want to follow you, where can they follow you?
They can take a look at my blog, which is, you know, a kind of semi-regular event. I'm pretty consistent with it. joemcnally.com/blog.
Perfect, perfect. And Mr. Snyder, where can they find you?
Google Plus is Jeffrey Snyder.
Okay.
Twitter is Jeffery Pix, P-I-X.
Okay, very, very cool. And obviously, it's always a pleasure
you,
to
sir.
be able to have
Always
you.
good.
It's always a blast to be able to have you guys here, because we do talk a lot about Adorama. I spend a lot of time at Adorama. I think Adorama provides a great value for what you do. And if you're a NAPP member, guys, this is the guy that you're talking to, right? So Adorama.com, when you have NAPP members have a special number.
Special number, 888. I don't remember it. It's on the NAPP member site.
All right, if you
I don't ever call it. But if you call it, you get me, and only me. So I'm happy to help you out.
All right. So, and we talked a little bit about this earlier. We were talking about community and like a lot of the history and a lot of the skills that I got were in old camera stores. Like, I remember going to an old camera store and going to play with cameras and doing things like that. And I think that in the age of like big box and internet and all that kind of stuff, we lose a lot of that. We lose a lot of that context. We lose a lot of skill because it's just click buy, click buy, click buy. And it's one of the things that I admire the most about what you guys do.
At Adorama Pro in the store, you walk in, you've got 3 of the best smartest, and most knowledgeable people in the business that have been in the business for years and years and years.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that I definitely appreciate. I appreciate being able to go in and talk about that kind of stuff.
And they're happy to help you out. And
It's
they're going
always
to tell you what you need and what you don't need.
It's always a pleasure to have you guys there. So
That's important, and that comes from your history out there in the trenches with us. You're not just a guy who's kind of relating, information off the internet. The reason I buy my cameras from Jeff is that he's a shooter along there with us. So he knows what works, what doesn't, what you do need, what you don't need, what you have to take into the field. And so that information is really informed by actual experience.
nice. Well, thank you very much for coming. And Joe,
Hey, thanks, man.
a couple more weeks we'll be at Photoshop Oracle, and then after that we'll be sipping mango. I mean, not you and I.
Well, would you object to that?
I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it. I'm just
They're good.
it's good. Guys, we could talk for hours, but unfortunately, this hour's up. We will see you guys next week. Thanks so much for stopping by. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Thank you, RC.
Hey,
Thanks, bud.
not a problem. Not a problem.
This week's episode of The Grid is sponsored by MPix. Shoot today, upload tonight, we ship tomorrow. Manfrotto. Imagine more. On One Software that gets you back to shooting. Adorama. More than a camera store. Tiffin. Helping create the world's greatest images. Peach Pit Press. Publishers of technology books, ebooks, and videos for creative people. Epson, exceed your vision. Expo Imaging, Rogue Flash Benders for speedlight enthusiasts. Nix Software, photography first. And B&H Photo, the professional source.